So I think it's time to get things started with this third episode of Tinker Talks. Now that we have the space all filled and more people will start coming in, welcome everyone. My name is AJ. I'm the social media manager here at the InvArch network, as well as InvArch Tinkernet, part of the network, and I'll be moderating this Twitter space. In the space today, we have Bob, the co-founder and head of community and artist relations at the Quest of Evolution, and Dakota Barnett, the founder and head of product of the InvArch network, including InvArch Tinkernet. To give a rundown of the Twitter space today, we'll start off with introductions from Bob and Dakota. Next, we'll go through the main question series where questions will be asked from the Quest of Evolution and Dakota, InvArch founder. From there, we will open up the floor to all of you in our audience today to direct your questions to either Bob or Dakota or both. And to end off the Twitter space, we'll have Bob and Dakota give their final statements as a send off to our awesome audience here with us today. How does that sound?
Sounds beautiful.
Sounds good to me too.
Great. So let's begin with your introductions, Bob and Dakota.
I'll start. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. This is the first opportunity actually I've had to talk about the project in long form, which is nice because I'm usually quite pressed for time and kind of counting the seconds when I'm pitching this stuff. So it's cool to be able to discuss this with like-minded people. Yeah, my name is Bob Juburi. I'm a musician by trade, or at least that's how things began. I was also a newsroom journalist prior to that. And since then, I've waded into the Web3 and tech space as a community manager. I'm a full-time community manager at a tech startup, a Web2 tech startup, I should clarify. And for the last year, have been building as a co-founder, head of community, as you mentioned, and artist relations at the Quest of Evolution.
I love that stuff. Fantastic. I must say, I'm side note before I introduce myself. I really am quite a massive fan of what you guys are diving into and doing. I think it's really awesome. So excited for everyone to learn more about you all. I definitely do believe that you deserve that at the very least. But that aside, we'll dive more into all that.
Thank you so much.
Of course. I'm Dakota Barnett, founder of InvArch. You guys kind of knew that. A lot of you guys know who I am, but I guess quick backstory is I used to work in politics. Turns out that for all the change in the world I wanted to make, politics is not the place to do that. Not if I guess you're impatient like I am. From there, diving into blockchain, InvArch itself is an idea that I've had for over 5 years now. Something working on for a long time, and for the past year really actually truly been building from nothing to something truly just really amazing and powerful, focusing on the creator economy and really just providing a really low level infrastructure for creators, for builders, even developers. So whether it's someone who's looking to create or someone who's looking to develop tooling for creators, we provide that infrastructure, that network for such. But yeah, that is me.
Thank you both for those wonderful introductions. Now it's time to move on to the main question series of Tinker Talks. So I'll go through each question, one for Bob, one for Dakota, back and forth. And that's pretty much the easy going flow of the main question series. So the first question for Bob, from the inquiry that I've done, looking into the Quest of Evolution, it's definitely a unique approach to collaborative multimedia utilizing NFT technology. For those that don't know much about the project, could you go into more detail on what the Quest of Evolution is about and how can people get more involved in collaborative storytelling on the Quest of Evolution?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on what Dakota said for a second, I was also kind of waded into politics myself, not actively, but I was a political philosophy student who thought that I was going to change the world via those means as well, and ended up kind of sticking to academia for as long as I could before I just, pretty much lost my mind and decided to abandon that for greener pastures. But yeah, thanks for that. The Quest of Evolution, at the highest level possible, if I can start that way, is essentially an endeavor to allow people to collaborate on any type of art without having to navigate the world of intellectual property as we know it, as currently constructed. It's obviously, as I'm sure you all know, a largely convoluted and pretty much antiquated at this point structure that's very difficult to navigate for your average independent artist. And so that's part of the problem we're trying to tackle. Our MVP product is much simpler than that. It's a multimedia NFT product that we like to call the crypto novel, which is essentially just a packaged user-generated story. And the way it functions is that we sell these NFTs, and the purchaser of the NFT is granted access to be able to add to an ongoing story. So so the way it works is that it's a multimedia NFT that includes visual art and the beginning to a story, which we like to call a spark verse. So that's like the opening paragraph, the cue setter to the world building, and the music, which scores it, kind of like a movie score would. And as I mentioned, by purchasing it, you're granted access to add to the story. So you can add a fixed amount of words to the ongoing storyline. And the idea really, I mean, we waded into this as really just to be part of the conversations about the types of outcomes that we want for Web3 and exploring what's possible with this technology. And we settled on starting out with written art, primarily because that's the background that I come from. I'm a former journalist, and I still write as much as I possibly can. And we thought it's a brilliant way to rethink and re-navigate what it is to create intellectual property and what intellectual property actually is. I know we'll get into intellectual property in and of itself down the line in this conversation, but that's kind of the basic structure. I like to think of Quest of Evolution as a two-layer thing. The high level viewpoint, you can say, is that it's a collaborative art project where the intellectual property, who owns what, is highly transparent and anybody can collaborate. This also allows people to be able to collaborate with people with artists that they look up to. And that's why a large part of what I'm doing right now is getting us in touch with artists and bringing architects on board to design these stories, to set cues for people, and to basically create the walls to a house that eventually will start getting filled by our community and by the contributors to the story. So I think that wraps up roughly what it is we do, and I'm sure we'll get into plenty more detail.
So I just want to say, I really love those answers. For one, resonating with just from the start when you're talking about kind of your interest in political philosophy, really resonated with you there, and the feelings there with everything. But I just want to underscore the fact that I really appreciate your focus on like joint collaboration and collaborative building, collaborative development. Something I really value, but I really do feel like I don't know. I mean, who am I? But I feel like you're really doing this the right way. So yeah, really love what I'm
Thank
out here.
thank you. Very kind words, and I would say that largely I consider myself and my lead co-founder, who I'd also like to take a moment to talk about in a moment, but we both pretty much embody the ideal user for this project, if that makes sense. And for that reason, it comes from within. My lead founder is Andrew, and me and him have been working on and creating for 15 years now, since we were in school together, and we come from the music world. We founded a record label together, so we have firsthand experience, not just as creators um, and now as builders, but also as people trying to navigate the world of collaboration and how those things are logged, how who made what. And you'd think these things are relatively simple, but unfortunately there isn't this database that you just go to and that tells you all. These things have to be very carefully managed, and most of the time we're talking about independent artists here, and for them to be able to consume all that information and make the right decisions is quite frankly impossible. And so yeah, we're basically the perfect user for this type of thing.
No, I love like every bit of it too, and just because this like there's so many, like, I guess she's like overlaps, or there's a lot of areas that you're diving into that really kind of, I want to say, like, there's throughout the InvArch journey, as we've been building up what we've been building, at various points we kind of talk about like different types of things that we would like to see or built on the network, or different ways we would like people to see them use the tech. And across the board, like, we talk about a variety of different things, code, which is why we have GitArch, and actually, well, there's a few other projects that I shouldn't name just yet, but when it comes to, it was actually Gabe, so Gabe, our co-founder, he was actually the one who, a good bit ago, we were brainstorming ideas, and he came up with the idea for like novels, and it was very brief. He just said, we didn't, we were busy building out infrastructure, but he always said that he would really like to see like collaborative storytelling, collaborative like story creation, and just to see someone in the Polkadot ecosystem now, like, coming out and tackling this, like, the millisecond that I had learned about you guys, instantly I guess you could say I was kind of bullish, but yeah, I just think it's really important. I think you guys are getting into something really important, because with like the creator economy, we're currently living through the most incredible shift in economic empowerment of our lifetime, period, that we will ever see. And it comes from this creator economy. I mean, it comes all from Web3 and what's possible as a result. But I really do think it's this shift towards this creator economy, this change in how people are able to generate value, real value, and monetize that value, work together to create value, and share in the value that's created. I think is going to be a very transformative future, a very empowering future for everyone truly that's involved. But it's a future that's not possible unless we have the proper tooling and services, such as like what you're building, in place for, as you're saying, like a regular everyday user to be able to tap into this new type of economy.
That's really well said. I couldn't have said it better at all. And it's also so, how should I say, it's really, it gives me confidence to hear you say that, primarily because, as I'm sure we can all relate to a certain degree, we waded into this, I'm not going to say blindly, but with a lot of conceptualism. Everything was very meta, and to a certain extent, I'm not even sure what the creator economy even is, and it was just all about ideas and conversations, and really starting from the ground up. And so I love hearing people like you speak about it as well, because it gets me excited. It makes me feel like this, all this building is actually, like you said, has a real value.
Well, I'll say this last point before we get back to questions, but from founder to founder, but just from, screw that, from regular everyday person who's looking at what you're building, I will say that what you're building is definitely important. There's definitely a lot of value there. And I imagine that whatever value can immediately be seen within the service you're building, you have the potential to deliver 10 times more value to your users themselves because of what you're building. So I think I think it's rather special.
Nice, awesome, and I'm sure there's a whole avenue here to be discussed maybe in the future about what we consider value in this particular case. But I won't get too philosophical about it. But yeah, I think another important thing that I would like to mention is that I feel like it's super important to go into these types of things with an open mind. I think essentially rigidity and Web3 just do not coexist, and so take everything I say as a flexible kind of influx thing that is going to be hopefully malleable to what the creator economy needs are.
Absolutely amazing first run on the initial questions for sure. Now with the first question towards Dakota, with more unique projects like the Quest of Evolution developing and on their way, what is your projected vision on what the creator economy would look like in the future?
Okay, so I'll be honest. I could probably go. I could probably talk about that for at least 2 hours straight, just talking about the vision for that. It's half the reason why working on those InvArch papers. Um, my vision for the creator economy is, I don't want to say it's like grand. It is grand. I can, like, I don't know. I can see it all in a sense. Like, I do have this big vision. It's not necessarily like, I don't want to mischaracterizes my vision, although I guess in a sense it is. But I I truly believe, like, I see this shift. I see a lot of stuff that's going on, and like understanding what's being built now, and kind of seeing like the patterns and the trends that are occurring. Like, in a couple of years, and with the right tooling, like today, the creator economy is very, it's just getting going, and it's very, very limited. Like, the creator economy today really is currently, and this is, don't, this shouldn't be seen as like an absolute statement, but more or less, like, we really have, I don't know, YouTube creators, like influencers, across different social media platforms, whether it be TikTok or YouTube. And then there is NFT creation, for artists, obviously taking a bit of a hit, with the markets and things like that. But what we're seeing is this very unique ability for people to create content, digital content, which is a beautiful thing, because granted, there can go, like, be a, production costs, so to speak, for some. But more or less, and what I really love about the internet is, it's like this infinitely generated digital Play-Doh that you have to build with, in a sense. Well, it's not just the internet; it's really just your computer. But with this, I see a big change, and I see a lot of, like, proper tooling coming out over the next several years. I see a lot more collaboration focused, like, platforms coming about. I see that trend now. I definitely even see a lot more, like, IP, like, stuff coming about as well. I imagine so. A year ago, when we were, like, really just only talking about intellectual property, I remember feeling rather very confident, but definitely early. There's some big name VCs out there that, I remember them just, like, loving, like, the idea, and some we got, like, the money, but for some, just like the hesitation around. But then you see, like, as time goes by, you see, oh, so this project starts talking about intellectual property, and then, oh, A16Z starts talking about it, and then this, and the next thing you know, you see a lot of people start to talk about it. So I definitely see this trend, like, picking up, this focus on not just IP, really, but the underlying root of it all, which is the ability to create. Um, and I see that being amplified over the next several years. So hopefully, you know, whether it's in just one or two, or whether it's in 5 or 10, um, I do imagine this system primarily built on Web3, and it is a, I want to say 50% collaborative, 50% just general content monetization. Hopefully more on the collaborative side, but um, having this new type of economy where people are, and actually, so this on what's being built now with the Quest of Evolution is a really good example. But individuals are going to be using dApps, applications and services that allow them to collaborate with others. I'm going to be able to collaborate, and when I say collaborate, they're going to be able to jointly build and contribute to something. There's different worlds. There's different, or different, like, different countries, different domains. So there's different, like, I guess you could say, compliancy frameworks to follow. They're not too complicated, but I am, all of that will be accommodated. I imagine, in the future. Like, so individuals will be able to jointly collaborate, contribute towards something, earn. There's joint ownership. See, there's in the world of, like, IP, there's, like, copyright. There's actual copyright ownership. There's use rights ownerships. Um, my suggestion is, because of how finicky joint IP rights can get. Like, one thing, like what we're doing with the assets on our chain, is you're able to deploy kind of like this trustless entity on chain that replaces what would have been a real world third-party facilitator. You're able to have this trustless on-chain facilitator of joint IP rights. And something like that will allow people to literally kind of just collaborate and work together in a very seamless way, the way that you would kind of like things to work if we didn't have all this weird like red tape in the system that's made by all these centralized institutions. I feel like I'm kind of drawing out my answer here, so let me like back full circle. The main thing is that in several years, I definitely just see this more streamlined collaborative environment, a trustless collaborative environment, and I see those focuses really being what drives. I think like the next bull market, like really. I think it's going to be the creator economy and these focuses, because this is something that, unlike DeFi, it's it's not a zero sum game. We're not talking about people just putting in value here, moving value out here, taking who front run this. None of that matters. We're talking about people generating value by actually building. And I'm really excited for this, because I think that this is how you actually create a sustainable economic future for Web3.
I do actually have a question, if nobody minds me taking the moment,
No, not at all.
which is there's this like intrinsic, I get this pushback on Twitter all the time, that there's this intrinsic kind of friction or tension rather between the stuff that you and I have been talking about in terms of intellectual property and the creation of value with the current jurisdictional system and that paradigm. And I think there is an argument to be made there. Like, I do understand the pushback in terms of why not kind of build to accommodate for existing structures rather than creating for the ground up. I think I know my answer to that, but I'd love to hear what your opinion is.
So, as with this, is actually like goes with follows the design of InvArch itself and what we've been doing with IP, and that is ultimately first and foremost like this might sound kind of big, but 100%. Yeah, no, I have every intention. I completely 100% believe that InvArch will one day completely replace the U.S. patent and copyright, the global patent and copyright system. Just replace it entirely. I think that the current system, current framework, current models, it's just not a good system designed to empower people. So I ultimately think that Web3 is our ability to create these new, powerful, trustless systems that are unstoppable, that are able to better facilitate the services, well, majority of the services that are provided by centralized institutions or authorities today. So first and foremost, yeah, I agree, or I haven't heard your statement yet, but I imagine I agree, that this is an opportunity to redefine how we define value and how we define the generation of value. But at the same time, I will say, so that is InvArch is designed to replace the current system, but at the same time, InvArch is designed to perfectly integrate and accommodate the system as well. So be able to replace the current IP system, but also accommodate the domain specific IP frameworks and even global IP framework systems, accommodate the structures that the needs of those systems. That way we can kind of, I don't want to say like fly under the radar, but that way as we continue to build out InvArch and as it gets more and more adopted, it can be used by individuals without friction from I don't know, the centralized powers that be. But ultimately, so yeah, I ultimately think that this is our opportunity to create new systems to redefine how we define value. But ultimately, I want to make sure, might be like trying to be a little slick here, but I also want to integrate with the current system. That way, just to onboard even more individuals for when we are able to ultimately just replace today's current system.
What a vision. Thank you, Dakota. Now for the second questions. Bob, I noticed that the Quest of Evolution is looking to develop its own community that will eventually become a DAO with its own native token, QEV. Could you tell us more about the QEV tokenomic model and what are the benefits for early supporters?
Yeah, and Dakota, yeah, wonderfully said. I couldn't agree more. I do think that you, one needs to be ambitious in this particular domain, and I love everything you said. Yeah, the Kev token. I mean, it is to be. I mean, well, a couple things at the offset. I'm not a tokenomics expert myself, so obviously I'm community lead and artist relations. So I wouldn't be able to speak on it in its entirety. But what I can say is that we didn't go into this trying to design a token and a DAO for the sake of it. We really did think of this at kind of prime mover level of like what is necessary, and ultimately the model we settled on was basically requires the Kev token. The Kev token is kind of the ribbon that ties it all together, if you like. And the idea, in summary, is that the token itself can be summarized in 3 words: utility, rewards, and intellectual property. I think we've covered intellectual property and we'll continue to do so. But in terms of utility, the basic idea is that it grants you DAO membership and it functions as a governance tool. And what I mean by that is that it gets you into the room, it gets you into the gated channels where people will be discussing what we're building, the types of novel genres that we want to execute, the way, the direction that the worlds that we're building are heading towards. So it was very important to us, given that common ownership and community is at the foundation of everything we're trying to do here. It's important that the Kev token functions as a tool to get people in the room. And there's a lot more details on this in the assets we have on our website and our Twitter and stuff that go into detail about how this distribution is coming about. We got a lot of help as well, and I'd like to give a shout out actually at this point to Bankless Consulting. They really helped us tie this together. They gave us just so much of their expertise and knowledge into what's economically viable, what's secure, and how we can structure this stuff properly. What else to say about it? And yeah, so I think that pretty much wraps up the Kev token. It's QEV, pronounced Kev. It's also important to note that it's going to be essential in terms of rewarding the community for contributing to our stories. So there's actually 2 methods of incentive for somebody to contribute to a particular story. One of them is that they would gain Kev tokens and therefore membership in the DAO, and the other is that they become part of a global royalty pool. And what the global royalty pool basically is that I contribute to a story and I therefore I earn value from every subsequent sale and contribution of that story. So if, for example, Dakota or I sell my NFT to Dakota with my contribution in there, immortalized on the blockchain, and then Dakota adds to it and contributes his part to the story and sells it on, I will then gain in what is the Moonbeam local token called Glimmer in the form of royalties, and that continues infinitely, obviously. And we also use that opportunity of integrating the royalty pool, which I should say is actually a really important part of the technology we're trying to introduce. I know that there's plenty of marketplaces that integrate royalty systems, but our wonderful CTO, Andre, has built a royalty splitter that can basically conglomerate on top of existing royalty splitters so that we can split it multiple ways. And so that's kind of an important cog in the wheel here. And the Kev token obviously ties that all together, because ultimately the value that we're going to give the token is based on the value of the stories that we create. And so that's kind of the governance utility part of it. In terms of the intellectual property aspect of the Kev token, our long-term ambition here, and this is kind of, if I were to leave you with one thing, it would be this, is that our Kev token becomes synonymous with a share of the intellectual property that our community creates. And so it wouldn't be a perfect one-to-one necessarily, because obviously there's going to be plenty of people that hold tokens that don't necessarily hold the equivalent in terms of contribution to a particular story, but it is still super important and tied intrinsically to what we consider the intellectual property that our ecosystem is creating. And so we want people to be able to say, like, I hold these Kev tokens and they represent the fact that I have added my brush of paint to this particular conglomerate piece of art, if that makes sense.
So I love all of that. I will say pro tip be like, yeah, we got pro tip. Make sure that when how you set it up, and it's just a matter of wording and language, really. The funny thing about law, just make sure that it is described as like the individuals they contribute and they get the token. Make sure the token is a reflection of use or royalty rights, but not ownership. And the reason I say this, you can have ownership, but you would need a third party, like a separate like entity that facilitates that. Um, once the reason I said to avoid like the word ownership versus use rights or royalty rights is because at least the United States, it's different globally. And I will say this is a annoying thing, but when it comes to IP ownership, so joint IP ownership, if 1% of an owner has an objection to something, it can't move forward. That's a really important to remember. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so actually, I should have probably mentioned this. We have a great, in fact, the first partnership that we sought when this was all coming together was legal for this particular reason, which is, and the way our team has kind of accounted for this is that when people do contribute to our stories, the ownership actually is directly now transferred to the Quest of Evolution. So the ownership, in essence, just, I mean, ownership, in quotations, in essence, is centralized with us so that we can then monetize it for the benefit of the community with the guidance of the community. So an example would be that, for example, let's say somebody comes along and wants to license the intellectual property rights to one of the worlds that we've built. We would then put that to the DAO community, who would then decide on whether or not to proceed with that transaction. And the fact that we own technically the art that's been created so far allows us to that kind of freedom to circumvent the 1% opposition issue. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, holding Kev tokens is holding a piece of the intellectual property rights pie, but that doesn't naturally or not directly
No, it's
correlate
beautiful
with ownership. Yeah.
There you go. It's like a weird finicky thing, and it's like I would in one sense I kind of just argue language, but no, you got it perfect.
Yeah, there's a language game happening always beneath the surface here.
Wonderful answer for the second question, Bob. Thank you. Now for Dakota, with the DAOist CDK in development and already, I would say, major DAO communities in the ecosystem, such as Chaos DAO, looking to implement it once it's available, how would the DAOist CDK help unique projects like the Quest of Evolution?
Okay, so let's see. So first and foremost, when it comes to DAO governance, the DAOist CDK is really effective in this area. Now, it is important to note that it's actually a bit more immediately more efficient, or at least at day one. Everything works out when these assets are INV, like native assets on our network. However, that's only for the only the case for the immediate future. We've actually been designing things. Gabe has been designing things to where um, I really think, and I don't want to like jinx myself, or I really think that InvArch is going to pull off some of the like most powerful XCM use cases that the ecosystem has seen this coming year. One of those, tapping into it, is going to be the ability for individuals on, say, if their asset was created on Moonbeam or Astar or anywhere using this smart contract, individuals without needing to transfer the asset off of the other chain are going to be able to essentially wrap that asset um, as an INV4 asset and experience all the functionality enhancements that we provide. So it gets like really, really zeroing in on cross protocol power developments here. So understanding that possibility in the future and the ability to interoperate with not just other assets, but also smart contracts across the ecosystem or pallets across the ecosystem. Understanding that, then I would say the DAO CDK is able to actually provide some really sweet governance solutions. I know you're building on Moonbeam right now. I would obviously and in good fun, but I would suggest you have an open mind to InvArch, which obviously is a lot easier said than done when talking about switching up tech plans. But the reason I say that is, so with the DAOist CDK, you could have it to where individuals are able to, you can have one overall story, and you can launch that. And using the CDK, you can actually govern the story using Discord. All governance would be on chain, so you could have like the treasury. We also have split royalties and automated distributor as well. So you'd be able to, as individuals, participate, and whether it's through your own custom UI or through submitting contributions through Discord itself, individuals would be able to participate in that system. That system could be the economic treasury system, could be managed through Discord. But you could kind of take things maybe a step farther if you wanted to, and you could have different bodies working on whether it be different novels or working on different sections of one single novel. Or if you have, let's say, individuals, just like there's music you had mentioned, so working on a score, you can easily separate these bodies and allow them to operate as a true DAO, putting the organization's aspect in DAO, and having multi-body governance. So different bodies that are able to autonomously operate, but also operate as a single organization towards a more main objective. And you could have treasuries, but also sub treasuries that are unique to their specific bodies. You get a little wonky with it, uh, really, but the cool thing is you'll be able to experience all of this. And of course, however elaborate one would want to go is up to them. You can do all of this through Discord, which would be really, really awesome. Um, I will say in the future, we'll definitely be looking to create our own UI as well, but the UI won't be necessarily focused around creator tools. Really would just be like a, a better UI than Discord, really. But yeah, that's the CDK. It could definitely be used. It was designed with the idea of supporting complex multi-layer governance throughout organizations, so multi-bodied governance, and then providing economic tooling and management tooling for those bodies to build, develop, collaborate on everything, but transparently, all on chain, while giving that doorway into it all being something familiar like Discord.
That sounds incredible and highly flexible. I mean, more flexible than I could have even imagined. There was so much to unpack there that I'm sure we'll probably touch on one day off stage. But the contributions in Discord, how does that work? Do you mind elaborating a little bit on that? Like how does that work under the hood?
So under the hood, still finishing up some systems now. Gabe's really just been finalizing like some proof of concepts on a lot of things to be transparent. So regarding that, the idea here is we'll need a little bit of custom logic. So using fat contracts. If I'll say this every time I bring them up, if you don't know what a fat contract is, you should check it out. And like saying this not to you, but to everyone. Like fat contracts are amazing. But what they do is they're able to handle both on-chain and off-chain computation, which is the off-chain computations, obviously the really key part here. So first and foremost, it's important to note that the server itself would be owned by I call it like a fat bot, so by a bot, but the bot itself is controlled and owned by we're changing up the terminology here, so by an INV core is what we call them, an INV4 core. So just one of our main primitives, one of our NFT primitives. It's owned by that, and that primitive is owned by whoever owns the tokens that's linked to it. But the thing about our primitive, so typically there's like NFT and then pegged to it or attached to it in some way, there's a token. We've introduced multi-class fungible tokens. So you can have one group of fungible tokens that represents utility A or access rights A, and then another token fungible token class that represents different access rights or different governance rights, different voting rights, or maybe let's say voting rights in a specific body of governance in that organization. Good, like that whole, got all that going there with those tokens. So then using that, we're able to have one class of tokens, or you could technically do whatever. If you wanted to have like a specific reputation token for each body, like in an organization, you could, or you could just have one general like reputation point in that system, or reputation like medium in that system. So using this, we can have one class of tokens that represents reputation or DAO reputation. And obviously we'll have to, the one thing that we'll have to finalize is determining like the method for basically submitting. So submitting, individuals reviewing, and then approving what has been submitted, and there's thresholds there. But once something has been submitted, being able to produce one of these tokens, one of these reputation tokens, and then there's a lot of different ways I'll say to go about this. What your like the pathway you're doing, I said will be more efficient, tailored for that. Whereas with ours, it was more so focused around just the flexing the DAO capabilities and really for our UDAL DAO collection. But with that, so based off reputation, there will be a native currency that can then be distributed to individuals based off of their reputation. We use reputation to determine like there's treasure, because the DAO is doing things like also like incubating other projects. So it's a little bit out of the scope of just the collaborative building. But the idea there is that then spoils or rewards or royalties are distributed to individuals based off of their reputation or based off of their share, percentage, you could say percentage share of contribution in the DAO.
Awesome. That amazing, and some translation required for me at some point. But that sounds brilliant, and I do see our projects kind of been intrinsically aligned.
Well, the important thing is, I will say this is so like you're building the actual product that users, like not like developers. Developers are real people. I just want to underscore that. But you're using the products that the masses would use. Whereas what we're building is this layer one infrastructure that is designed for mainly really for just people like you to build those type of services and solutions, but hopefully just be able to build them a bit, hopefully either faster or just given some freedom to let you get a little wonky with things if need be. But as far as like actually providing like full on like solutions, like we do have GitArch, we do have like there's the DAO CDK, but really that's just imagine it's like a DAO launcher. So we do have that, and then there's our Saturn multisig, which I think you'll love hearing about that. Actually, we could talk about that at a later time. But yeah, the actual like the suite of products, like of what you're building to that magnitude, for people to use, that's like the real. Those are the real winners, if you ask me. So just wanted to like highlight that difference there.
Amazing, yeah, and my curiosity remains unquenched. I will definitely talk more about this.
Thank you so much, Dakota, for that answer. Now we're on to the last questions in the main question series. So for Bob, knowing what I've gathered of the Quest of Evolution, is it fair to say that the Quest of Evolution team is looking to establish IP commodities on chain? Could you tell us more about what motivated you and your team to adopt and aim for this objective?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. What motivated us is, I guess you could say, the convoluted nature of current rights structures, to put it simply. Obviously, I mean, we need to zoom out a little bit. I know Dakota touched on this briefly, but intellectual property means a lot of different things. Generally, it's an umbrella term for all sorts of different types of rights associated with creation. In music, for example, like that's obviously kind of my background, so I know them quite well. You have publishing rights, ordinary copyright, master rights, mechanical rights, performance rights, and these are all things that are not only difficult to understand individually, but they're also expensive to keep track of and super tedious to actually get done. So yeah, I mean, anyway, we've harped on about how much the current structures suck. So I'll stop there with that. But that's what motivated us, and particularly cross-territorially. I mean, you could think you have everything wrapped up in England, for example, and then somebody used your song in Japan, and now you're in no man's land again. And so I would say that our approach, and I don't want to speak on behalf of Dakota, but I suspect his approach too, is that we're approaching IP at a very bare bones level. Is that fair to say, Dakota? Kind of stripping it down.
Oh yeah, so like our focus is providing really a framework that can accommodate, that can define all the different, I guess, like vehicles or classifications of licensing and rights as individual tokens, provide the ability for that, and provide the ability to leverage and facilitate these rights. However, the key, and I can't stress this enough, the key here for our success has been to be a low level framework, because we're really broad and out there and trying to do all these things, like to provide a low level framework that can more so accommodate these needs, but not necessarily like we avoid being proactive on defining actual rights and then enforcing those rights themselves, because it gets, well, that's just, we're a block, we're the chain. You guys, we'll leave that to builders like you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think even builders like us aren't doing much definition.
But no, that's good. That's what I mean is, like, so what you want to do is you want to provide this flexible. You want to provide a flexible framework that can accommodate the various needs, because, like you said, it's an umbrella term unlike anything I've ever seen. I dare say there's no other competitor when it comes to umbrella terms such as intellectual property. Um, but because of that, it's important for us to, whether it's you or I, just to be flexible to accommodate that.
Yeah, and the real word here is framework. I find myself using the word framework now like 3 times per call, because that's exactly what it is. And kind of and being open-minded and allowing freedom for what occurs within that framework, is super important for us as well. Despite us obviously not being the layer one solution like you guys, but even within our kind of essentially very specifically gamified structure of creation that we've created, we want no holds bars on what happens in there. And obviously, going back to rights for a moment, because our project or our MVP, these crypto novels, are multidisciplinary right to earn models. Essentially, they are, oh sorry, right to earn, but also, sing to earn and draw to earn models. We are really using the word intellectual property and stretching it to its limits here. And I think the important kind of value function of that is to also kind of reveal how vacuous that definition was in the first place. And so there's kind of an important, maybe slightly academic endeavor happening very beneath the hood here, which is just to kind of expose the fact that these rights needn't be so convoluted and up in the air all the time. And we hope that the Kev token, and I also hope for you that your individual tokens that represent different types of rights also achieve this, which is to make that link between creation and idea generation and the monetization of them just much clearer, more transparent, more obvious to everybody, and to essentially remove the headache from the creators themselves.
No, I agree. I guess I really appreciate you. Like, this might sound odd because it's our first time meeting, but just as a human being, I really appreciate you. Like
Oh man, same.
the
Thank you.
take
Same.
and mindset and really like shared philosophy that you have is for me very refreshing. I don't know. I just feel like I'm like, yeah, this guy gets it. Like, I don't know. Like,
I feel like I've made a friend as well.
I genuinely like a really big fan of what you're building, and then also just your mindset, the mindset that's behind what's being built. I think that's very important, and I think that reflects in kind of why I like what you're building so much, is because you're doing it correctly. But like, yeah, it's I like what you said when you said, like, from ideation to creation, and it's just cool because, like, what the simplest, like, what started all this, at least for me, was at its core very simple. What I wanted to create was, I wanted to create a bridge between ideas and creation. that was the most basic way that I used to tell it to people like 5 years ago. Um, you share that too. Like, I just want there to be this environment, or even if it's hubs of environments, but just the possibility for people to trustlessly collaborate, to be able to share in the generation of value that they contribute to. And hopefully, because there's people out there all over the world that have phenomenal ideas, great ideas, and potentially world-changing ideas. And having a great idea is one thing, but having the skills and or resources to actually bring something to fruition, and that's a whole other tale. And solving that problem is truly one of my like I that's why I'm alive, is I want to solve that.
Yeah, well put. And I want to use the opportunity again to shout out our lead founder who spawned this idea. I don't want to stand here and sound like this is all come from within me. This has been my life. I live and breathe this, and have been for the last year as a builder and co-founder and community manager, etc. But the idea was spawned by my lead founder, Andrew. And I would also use this opportunity to shout out Yancey Strickler for moving on this as well, like in the way that he's going about it. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but you guys should check him out. He's founder of Kickstarter, former CEO of Kickstarter, who runs a company called MetaLabel now. And I think what they're doing also runs in parallel, at least philosophically, with what we're doing, in the sense that it's like trying to granulate creation down to like its individual parts, and making that link between an idea and creation, like you said, just more transparent and more tangible. So yeah, just a couple of shout outs to my lead founder and another big inspiration in the space.
Oh, that's I would love to actually like just even just loosely like powwow, like just I don't know, shoot my language, but just like shoot the shit, I guess, so to speak. I would love to do that. It's just because it's funny. I at one point would kind of tell people describing what InvArch is sometimes a task, and for those who know me know that sometimes it takes a while to explain it. So I try to condensely do that, and one of my methods has been to say like, yeah, it's like the general idea is to create like if you were to get LinkedIn and Kickstarter and maybe something like Indeed, and they just make a baby, and that's and that's what I want to try to produce, is something like that.
At least you have a good analogy at hand. I'm still looking for one.
Incredible answer, Bob. Thank you so much. Now, for the last question for Dakota, at this point, which has been briefly highlighted already, I think it's fair to say there are some parallels between the technology that the InvArch team is building and what the Quest of Evolution team is building as well. Speaking on a broader perspective, how do you think the InvArch network could truly empower a project like the Quest of Evolution?
Well, I think I touched a good bit like already on things such as um, like I guess like how our architecture could be leveraged in their favor, regarding whether it's like treasury management, facilitation of funding, other like working on that, or they have that themselves as well. But being able to use things like the CDK, really just for governance, or if they were ever open to, say if they wanted to. I don't want to say it's not that I want to underscore something. It's not that they can't get wonky on Moonbeam. Absolutely can. They already are. They're doing great things. I like what they're doing. I'm just what I underscore when I say like when I talk about if it were on InvArch, I guess the big thing I want to underscore there is that on InvArch it could just maybe be easier for them to build out those things. But nonetheless, I imagine all those systems and them building them out. Um, so the main thing is it could just maybe make things a bit easier for their team. Maybe add some more lucrative possibilities for their creators. That's a big thing there. But really, what I would love to do, and something that we are working on, is what I would truly love to do is have it to where they can just keep doing what they're doing, and we're going to focus on interoperability and being able to provide our solutions and our tech to them to use without them needing to make any big changes. I think that would be honestly most ideal, and give us some time. And I know that what I'm about to say might sound a little like, huh? But soon, I in the future, I I know that we will be able to see things such as um, the palettes that are on Tinkernet or on the InvArch network being able to be applied and used in dApps and services across other parachains as if our protocol was a native protocol of that chain itself. Which I know sounds a little wonky, but that will be a reality one day. And with that, then Quest of Evolution could, if they wanted to, could tap into some of the features and services that our protocol provides without them needing to ideally learn anything new or do anything different. It would more so be a decision in maybe, I don't know, an hours of coding, if that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think a lot of the tools you're talking about sound like, and it's also obviously difficult to predict when and how we need this stuff, you know, and so I don't doubt that at some point a collaboration is due, just because of how closely aligned our projects are, both kind of fundamentally and in a bigger picture way.
You make me want to kind of create a. I'm talking loosely for fun here. Well, kind of maybe. I know there's probably something like it out there already. There's a DAO for almost everything, but I would like a DAO, a fellowship, or whatever. I don't care, but it would be really, really cool um, to have something where there's a lot of like-minded individuals focused on the creator economy and collaboration. I would love to get like some type of regular group going with people like that, and just I imagine the collaboration that comes out of all of that. For one, I think it'd be refreshing, but oh, I imagine some of the most incredible innovations being produced out of those talks.
Definitely, it sounds like something we have to start immediately, actually.
Truly wonderful. Wonderful. So that's it for the main question series of Tinker Talks. Switching gears to our amazing friends in the audience today. For those that have questions for either Bob or Dakota, it is a first come, first served basis. If you're on mobile and it may be your first time, all you need to do is tap on that microphone icon titled request to speak, and I'll accept you in so you can ask your question.
See, man, these are the toughest questions of my life. No, I fair warning. I don't know why, but this is actually a thing. Is very, very, very rarely do we get questions. I think it's a good thing when we do get questions. They're very, which I love any question, simple question, complex question, and there's this thing as a bad question. I don't believe, but we'll either have like that or like some really great ones. But yeah, it's just a pattern of ours. I don't know if it's because hopefully I like to say it's because we explain things so well during the talk. But yeah, definitely like, oh, I see Dustin's here. Let me shut up.
Yeah, definitely got a question for sure. No, you explained everything very well on your end. I do have some questions for Quest of Evolution. So first question will be is why are you building on Moonbeam?
It's a great question. Our journey took us to Moonbeam rather naturally. From a kind of first moment, you know, we were obviously open-minded, and initially we were looking for any kind of EVM compatible solutions, but we ended up with Moonbeam primarily because of the NFT marketplace, mynft.com. It's still in the beta stages, but it's launching in a couple of weeks, I believe. And we just really aligned with them in terms of royalty schemes. They have some beautiful, innovative kind of other aspects within their marketplace, most notably their auction system. They have something called the GBM auction, which really just spins the English auction in a wonderfully fresh and innovative way by essentially rewarding people for making bids. And so for price discovery, it's actually a wonderful thing. So and so much of what we're doing is to try and be on the cutting edge of what's going on, and so that really attracted us to MyNFT. They've also been collaborators of ours and advisors of ours, and so we naturally gravitated towards their marketplace, which is on the Moonbeam network. So that's the basic short answer. I could get into a kind of long winding thing about energy efficiency and about scalability and all that, but that's the short, honest answer.
For sure. And also to add to your scalability, how do you feel about the future of smart contracts? Do you feel that EVM and Solidity have that, cutting edge compared to, say, like Rust-based contracts like WASM smart contracts?
I don't know, Dustin. Sorry, I genuinely don't know. That's just a question for our CTO, and I'm learning as much as possible on a daily basis. But unfortunately, I can't give you a proper answer on that. So I'll just have to divert.
No worries. Yeah. No. Either way, the concept and everything you're building is quite advanced, and also immediately when I was listening in, it gave me great ideas of such. Having some DAO base to create some second part of a game. Say you created the first part already with the DAO, and then you can introduce like a second place, a second area. Say like if it was like Pokemon and you have like Kanto and like Johto, you're like, oh well, what kind of Pokemon can you catch? I know Dakota will love that. And like like how is that shaped? And also I guess that's just mentioning it, but to add to that as a question, so with the DAO, what does that structure look like when it comes to being on chain? And maybe you already talked about it, but like how does that interaction work? Is it going to be like the DAO CDSK kind of feel, or like a traditional like substrate DAO kind of feel? Like I don't know if there's a difference. I don't know the complete complexities. I'm sure Dakota, of course, does. But like, how does that look for somebody that does participate in the DAO?
Yeah, also love to hear Dakota on this because I don't know necessarily what that difference would be, but from the way you framed it, I guess we would be leaning towards the traditional DAO structure, where it's token holding based, where we're going to obviously split up the types of voting into like informal, formal, and executive, with the executive being the diversificate questions of diversification, kind of bigger stage questions such as the licensing of the intellectual properties that we've created, and the formal and informal voting structures would be more artist based. So who should be designing the visual arts for this particular author, or who should be scoring this particular novel, what genre should we be focusing on? And so we want to create this open floor, informal, off-chain voting structure for the most basic creative decisions, because without that the whole thing kind of conceptually falls apart for me personally. Like this was something I was extremely vocal about, is that we have to basically give the artistry to the floor. Otherwise, none of it makes sense anymore, to me anyway. But I would love to hear as well from Dakota about how their kind of DAO spawning tools and how they might perhaps differ to the more traditional DAOs. I mean, my experience in DAOs has been as a member, as a voting governance member for the last sort of year or two in different little projects, mainly music-based ones, and so my exposure is limited to that. But I'm curious to hear from Dakota what he thinks about that, and what other structures exist that might challenge the one that I've just laid out.
Yeah, and also I do have like a question of my own. I want to ask to this an idea that I have. I think would be really awesome to share with you. But so I will say this. So I am. It's like forewarning. Uh, Majority. There's been maybe a handful out of the thousands or hundreds of DAOs that have existed so far in Web3. Only maybe like a single digit handful of them are actually DAOs. Whereas what they actually are just decentrally governed protocols, which is good and fine. But as a DAO is a decentralized, autonomous organization. So like I always get big on that O there. So the ability to have different bodies that operate together autonomously. Like, it's a good way to imagine it is like you say, I'm looking at the Capitol building right now. So like there's like in the United States you have Congress, and that's one body. I mean, really, is the whole U.S. government is like the boom, the core body. But you have Congress, and they have this this pool of money, and they're able to delegate how much money goes to all of these different departments, and all those different departments are have their own unique responsibilities, and they need to decide themselves autonomously how to use the funds that were distributed to them, how to spend them, and so on and so forth. So, like, to me, what I'm hoping to achieve with the DAOist CDK, and I don't mean to knock like past DAOs. I believe it's simply because the tooling hasn't been in place for them to actually launch a DAO, and I don't think the average person is keen to write the code that would be needed for something of this type of, not just complexity, but like modularity, so to speak. So like I feel like our big thing, our main goal with the CDK isn't necessarily, it's not to define the, let's say, the business logic of things. We're actually designing this in a way to where someone can use our primitives as like the wood, the building blocks of a house in a sense, and then use a smart contract that is written and deployed on Astar or on Moonbeam, and allow that to actually add in and kind of define some of the custom trustless logic that is to be executed. But the bring it back full circle. Main thing is, like with us, is we want to provide a launcher that allows people to launch, define, i.e., like construct their organization, define their organization, manage all on chain, but be able to define something no matter how simple or complex it is. So even if it is something, if you just let's say there's just one main body and one main like voting body, you could manage that through using the CDK. Manage that through Discord. It's on chain, so you can create your own UI too. But Discord's just an optional UI. So provide that, or hypothetically, if, because working in politics is one of my things I would reference it by, was that hypothetically speaking, the CDK needs to be able to accommodate the organizational complexity of the United States government. So made it to where, again, we're not defining the rules as in like this department needs to do this and this department needs to do that. However, defining the infrastructure, the framework that will providing the framework that is able to define all of the different organizational bodies within a DAO. Even if it's a body inside of a body inside of a body, and blah blah blah. So like that's our main thing there. I don't know if that kind of answered the question per se, or more so try to explain a little bit about what the CDK ultimately, what we aim to provide there is just something that launches the most accommodating frameworks possible for DAOs. But then also leaving it to where custom logic can then be added in separately using smart contracts.
Yeah, that's awesome. You also inadvertently revealed your location to about 12 kilometers squared for me. So thanks for that.
Gotcha.
No, but it's also, it's interesting. I might come look for you.
I see you.
But the, what I was, sorry, Dustin, to interrupt, but just to say, it's interesting because our perspectives are kind of different on this, because as a layer one perspective, you're kind of liberated from the task of issuing defined rules, whereas my position is so much, like, there's so much responsibility and kind of care that needs to be taken with defining the framework and the structures and the voting structures. And so I'd love to speak to you in more depth on this one day, because minds like yours who have knowledge in actual functioning democracies, or somewhat functioning democracies, that are super valuable here. And like, to me, I really take this to heart, not just because community is kind of my playground, but also because, like, the reason I got drawn into this stuff in the first place was my fascination with social structures. So there's like a bit of a responsibility here, and I don't feel like I have the answers, to be honest. Like, I just don't. Like, just been doing our best, speaking to smart people and trying to kind of work this out, without the arrogance of, I know this is probably a controversial statement, but I do think the word decentralization gets used kind of flippantly, as if it's just this obvious, simple solution that we've all been overlooking. It's like, well, not really. It's more like, how much sugar do you want in your tea? How much centralization do you want in your tea? And the possibilities are endless. And I'm super open minded on this, and I want to be learning about it.
Let's say you're on the right path. I mean, you're killing it from the way I see it. Like, the perspective you have, the goals, what you're actually doing. I mean, I don't even know you, but I'm proud of you. I mean, if that helps.
I'm very flattered. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dustin, for coming up on the Twitter stage or the Twitter space stage and asking some awesome questions.
Thank you, Dustin. I'm sorry if I didn't answer your question properly. Thank you very much.
No, you did. It just reminded me of the thesis I was listening to in Berkeley, and they were talking about the fundamentals and structure and framework of governance. And then somebody asked a question, "Oh, is it a DAO?" And then, just like Dakota elaborated, was basically building that structure. So it's good to hear that same analogy, but actually implementing it into our ecosystem. So that's amazing.
Nice, but perhaps you have to send me that video. Actually, I'd love to, if you recommend it.
There's no. I was live. It was. I'm not sure if it was
Oh,
taped.
got
It
you.
might.
Got you.
It might. But
got you.
So, seeing as there are no other question requests, it looks like we have come to the end of today's Tinker Talks. Bob, it was an absolute delight to have you on today's Tinker Talks episode. Thank you for your awesome answers and incredible insights into the quest of evolution. I'm super interested personally in your project, and I cannot wait to see it flourish even further. Before we finally end things off, Bob and Dakota, I'm sure the audience would love to hear some final words from both of you, respectively.
Yeah, love's probably a strong word, but hopefully, hopefully there's some people still listening. I mean, obviously, thank you so much for having me on. I'm actually planning to write a piece about imposter syndrome in Web3, because I do feel like the bridge from all over the shop, really, for me personally, from music, from Dakota, from politics, and all of us, I'm sure we've come from different walks of life into Web3. There's an element of novelty and like darkness about it all that I think requires confidence to overcome. And I've struggled with imposter syndrome throughout this whole year or two of kind of thinking and building and speaking to people, and I'm not sure what my point is, but just to mention that thank you so much for allowing me to do this and speak to you guys and build some confidence, and yeah. So for anyone who didn't ask a question because of that type of feeling, I highly recommend that you just take a stab in the dark and see what happens, because most of the people that I've spoken to in the space have been lovely, Dakota being a prime example, and ultimately we're just thinking about stuff and trying to build stuff, and it's not as esoteric as it sometimes sounds. So thank you so much, and I hope this was a good episode for you all, and I definitely want to continue this conversation offline and maybe in an episode in the future again, once we've actually built and sold some functioning products.
I mean, I just want to say, before I even like get in myself, I just want to say, it's crazy. I don't even know what to say. The imposter syndrome, it's crazy. And I get it. I've been there. I know that feeling. But I want to take this as a moment, as an example to highlight the obviously like how valid of a thing imposter syndrome is. We wouldn't be talking about it right now if it wasn't a thing. But if it helps, I just want you to know how crazy it is to hear that's coming from you. Because if that is a case, then I will say you're really good at hiding that. If that is how you feel, but also just a reminder that, I mean, I don't know, please don't feel that way. You're doing a fantastic job. Honestly, like what you're building, absolutely amazing, innovative. It's such a good, like empowering others. It's such a good product that's being built. A very empowering service. And I mean, from what I've heard about your founders, your co-founders, absolutely brilliant. And talking with you, absolutely brilliant. So just if you do ever feel that way, just, I don't know if it helps remember what I said now, but just remember that what you are building is so much greater than that imposter syndrome, because what you're building has the ability to empower thousands, if not millions, of lives. And that imposter syndrome might come and go, but the impact that you can have on all those lives, that's forever. And I think that's a really powerful thing, because you are definitely on the path to achieve that impact. I just want to say that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course. But
And I don't think I've complimented your project enough either. And if I haven't, it's largely because I've just been learning about it live. But absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to talk about this more. And there's definitely a collaboration due.
no, I love it. I imagine we will. I mean, the synergy here has been there's just even still there's so much I want to talk about, to be honest. Just loosely like sharing ideas or visions for the future. But with the future, I will say, well, first and foremost, I will say the past couple of weeks I have been rather busy, and it was also bad timing because I kind of started to isolate. It was before the FTX thing, but then when that happened and the whole market started going crazy, it was just like it come back and it was like, ugh, like the mood in the air has definitely changed from the FTX bit. So I just want to say we've been working on a lot, and I'm getting ready to release something regarding our token economy, a dual token economy system that there's nothing like it in the ecosystem. It's the first take on tokenomics like this. I'm really like, I don't want to get ahead of myself. And I still want some more peer review, but I will say I am I'm too excited. I get too excited when I think about this. So I'm excited, as I obviously just said, to share that with everyone soon. We've been working on a lot of stuff, getting everything ready for the Udall's mint. I apologize. It was not a simple 1 to 2 day task getting everything ready like I thought it would be at all. However, we that's pretty much just about done getting the last few things together with our files for the mint. So I'm looking forward to that next week. I'm just waiting for that to be done so then we can go ahead and ship out a permit, like an actual finite date and time. Excited for that. Everything we have building. We got a lot of awesome stuff, like news and alpha coming out. I spewed a lot of alpha. My recent interview on the Riri show. So I definitely recommend keeping an eye out for that. We have plans for Polkadot soon. I'm going to release, our plans for that as well. So yeah, I've been busy planning, excuse my language, but planning my ass off and getting a lot of things ready for the project and for the community. So do anticipate the month of December possibly being one of the most productive, amazing, loudest months yet for the project. And yeah, that's all I really got. Just thank you for everyone who showed up. Thank you for everyone who came to learn about the Quest of Evolution. And also just thank you for coming up here, for participating in this. Honestly, like we've in the past we've had amazing individuals come up and talk about different topics, but being able to just share our passion here over collaboration has really been one of my most, if not the most enjoyable conversation yet I've had the chance to have during Tinker Talk. So thank you as well very much for deciding to do this.
No, literally, absolutely any time, absolutely any time, and you've inspired me massively, and I can't wait just to get to work now.
I love it. Well, AJ, I will leave it back to you to give the final sayonara.
Thank you. With all that said, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in for this third episode of Tinker Talks. Thank you once again, Bob from the Quest of Evolution, Dakota from InvArch Tinkernet. I wish all of you, including the audience, a fantastic rest of your week and a great upcoming weekend. See you on the next episode of Tinker Talks. Bye for now.
See you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye, guys. Take care.
Oh, see you, Dustin.